music industry calls for blackout over death. I don't really have to give any kind of prerequisite to this talk or this conversation because we're all pretty aware of what's going on, what has been going on, and what's transpired. This is an article response video, and so I'm going to read this article. We're going to talk about it for a few. This is by Mark Savage, a BBC music reporter, and it was published on June 1st, 2020. The music industry is to observe a day-long blackout on Tuesday in response to George Floyd's death last week. All three major record labels have shared a message on social media promising a day to disconnect from work and reconnect with our community. Employees have been given Tuesday off, as a day of action intended to provoke accountability and change. Interscope vowed not to release new music this week, while Apple Music's Ebro Darden canceled his radio shows. Floyd, a 46-year-old African-American man, died last week after a white police officer knelt on his neck for 7 minutes. Minneapolis policeman Derek Chauvin has been sacked and charged with third-degree murder. He's due to appear in court on Monday amid ongoing protests in the US and UK. Many of music's biggest stars have spoken out about the father of two's death. Taking to Instagram on Sunday, Rihanna spoke of the devastation, anger, and sadness she experienced over the last week. Watching my people get murdered and lynched day after day pushed me to a heavy place in my heart, she wrote. Beyonce filmed on Instagram an Instagram video urging fans to sign a petition seeking justice for George Floyd. We all witnessed his murder in broad daylight. We're broken and we're disgusted. We cannot normalize this pain. And I haven't watched this video yet, but I'm definitely going to watch this afterwards. Right now it's at about 2.5 million likes. Dr. Dre also called for action, saying his heart is still aching. It felt like that cop had his knee on all of our necks, meaning black men, he said on Apple Music's Young Money Radio. That's pretty deep. It's extremely painful because it keeps going on. It continues to go on, and it's like, what can we do? Or what do we need to do to make this thing stop? Other pop stars, including Ariana Grande, J. Cole, Tinashe, Nick Cannon, Youngblood, Camila Cabello, and Shawn Mendes, joined protesters across the U.S. over the weekend. Ariana Grande is one of the biggest artists in the world. Not only did she use her platform to express her anger and pain towards what's going on, she also participated in the streets with the rest of the protesters. Halsey, who took to the streets in Los Angeles, told fans that she and other protesters had been fired up by police. We were peaceful, hands up, not moving, not breaching the line, she captioned a photograph of police in protective gear. They opened fire of rubber bullets and tear gas multiple times on us. Citizens were not provoking them. Yeah, this is serious. I mean, as you already know, but as anger spread through the music community, a message spread on social media calling on the industry to take an urgent step of action to provoke accountability and change. As gatekeepers of the culture, it's our responsibility to not only come together to celebrate the wins, but also to hold each other up during loss, reads the statement, which circulated under the hashtag "The show must be paused." Among those reposting the message were Warner Music Group's Sony ATV, Universal Music Group, Motown, Capitol Records, British label Dirty Hit, Eminem's Shady Records, and legendary producer Quincy Jones. You know, that's the one thing about this that's so interesting. Is like you don't really ever desire for negativity to happen. But I'm really glad to see how it's really striking deep in the hearts of many people, and it's drawing out empathy and drawing togetherness in a whole different way. Um, and as it should. I mean, this is something that's really devastating. All of my shows are canceled, wrote Apple's Ebro Darden on his Instagram feed. I will air replays of conversations with community activists, politicians, and revolutionary music. Wow. Task Force. We stand together with the black community against all forms of racism, bigotry, and violence, said Columbia Records, which is home to Beyonce, Pharrell Williams, Lil Nas X, Bob Dylan, Bruce Springsteen, and Adele. Now more than ever, we must use our voices to speak up and challenge the injustices all around us. In the words of Dr. King, there comes a time when silence is betrayal, when you have a responsibility to raise your voice for change. The time has come, added Universal Music Group on social media. Universal's chairman, Sir Lucian Grange, also issued a memo to staff laying out plans for a task force headed by Chief Counsel Jeff Harleston to accelerate our efforts in areas such as inclusion and social justice. We must do more, and now is the time to do it, and to do it with an unprecedented sense of urgency, he wrote. Even more importantly, we must commit ourselves not merely for this week, this is the part I like, but we must continue that commitment without let up in the months and years ahead. The British Record Industries Trade Body, the BPI, also confirmed it will participate in the Blackout Tuesday. Like many of our members, we will suspend normal business tomorrow, it said in a statement. Our staff will share in this moment to reflect on the recent tragic events, stand in solidarity with all those who suffer discrimination, and encourage our leaders across the world to act. So Interscope puts up a Instagram post that says, Interscope Geffen A&M joins Blackout Tuesday in a day of reflection and meaningful action. IGA will not release new music the week of June 1st. Instead, IGA will contribute to organizations that help to bail out protesters exercising their right to peaceably assemble, aid lawyers working for systematic change, and provide assistance to charities focused on creating economic empowerment in the black community. IGA is committed to taking long-term action in the continued fight for racial injustice. And I mean, that's something that's really touching to me, even just reading that, because again, the farther we go in time, the more we have more people that are empathizing with this pandemic for all intents and purposes, and so that means a lot, especially me being a dark-hued man of color. It just personally means a lot. Universal Music Group puts out an Instagram that says, this Tuesday, June 2nd, the Universal Music Group family will observe Blackout Tuesday, a day to contemplate, connect, and organize. We stand with the black community. Hashtag the show must be paused. And then Warner Music put out a Instagram photo that has, a number of people that have been unfortunately lost to this particular type of pandemic, and it says, say my name, and it has Trayvon Martin, Eric Garner, Ahmaud Arbery, Sandra Bland, Breonna Taylor, George Floyd, Tamir Rice, Bottom Jean, Betty Jones, Michael Brown, Tatiana Jefferson, Stephon Clark, and then some more as well. It continues to go on. Deron Perry puts out an Instagram that says, we stand together with the black community against all forms of racism, bigotry, and violence. Now more than ever, we must use our voices to speak up and challenge the injustices all around us. Sony Music says on Tuesday, June 2nd, Sony Music will proudly take part in Blackout Tuesday. We stand in solidarity with the black community, our artists, employees, colleagues, and community leaders, in fighting racial injustice and equality. This will be a day of action committed to meaningful change in our communities, both now and in the future. Apple Music says, in steadfast support of the Black voices that define music, creativity, and culture. Like that's heavy right there. I mean, just that statement. In steadfast support of the Black voices that define music, creativity, and culture, we use ours. This moment calls upon us all to speak and act against racism and injustice of all kinds. We stand in solidarity with Black communities everywhere. So that's pretty much the end of this article. Yeah, this is a heavy time. I mean, for me personally, it's like, so I'll say that my current feelings about this really is one of those things where, you know, I have what I would say is the least amount of interaction, the least amount of exposure even to what's going on with this situation out of really all the people that I know. Now, the reason why I say that is that I'm aware of what's going on, but in order to practice with my emotions, to be able to know myself, know my emotions, and know how much I can handle, I've allowed myself to be shielded to a particular degree so that it doesn't take me to a really to a place that's not healthy for me, especially if I'm going to be in support and be able to be a part of being on the front lines in any way that I can to spread awareness, you know, to call for change and that kind of thing. So with that being said, you know, a lot of this information is new to me, and I was telling someone the other day, I've really used the conversations that I've had with other people to really experience the depth of what's going on. And I'm experiencing people's emotions really, really deeply. It's, you know, it's really hurting people really deeply. It's really causing, you know, some real deep dissonance. And the thing that I've taken note of is, you know, a number of these people that I've talked to are people like myself that really practice, you know, meditation, mindfulness, and practice equanimity and compassion, and just the ability to just cope with things in a particular way, you know, and to not get completely thrown overboard by things. But it's really striking deeply. The thing that I, even in reading this article, that is most inspiring to me would be the fact that this is really striking not just people that can directly relate because of their demographic, but people all around the world and people of other ethnicities. And it's causing people to spread awareness in a whole different way. So I really appreciate that, because that's what's really needed for real change. It's spreading awareness. It's people just really knowing what's going on, how they can participate in change, and to be able to be empathetic to the situation and to each other. So I've had a couple conversations, and I've even heard a couple conversations. In fact, I'll be having another conversation very soon with a good friend of mine, where we're going to talk about these issues, you know, and more, and just how we're responding to it. And it's just one of those things where I was listening to a podcast, and to just hear people of, you know, European descent and just other ethnicities just really sound as if it was them, you know, that it happened to, or was their family member. It's honestly something that I really hang my hat on, and I was just speaking to someone about this earlier. How do you develop empathy, you know, in people? And my answer is, the way that you do that is that you continue to share stories, and you continue to share awareness so that other people, the more stories that they hear, the more awareness that they hear of other people's journeys and what they're going through and what they're dealing with, at some point in those stories, you have a chance of finding a connection. Whether that person hears about something that happened to another person that happened to them, or somebody else that they know, or it could even be that they were the father of, 4 children, or in this case, I think it said 2. And the child's name could be the same name as another person. And that's enough to say, wow, I have a child by that name. What would I do right now if something happened to them? Or what would they do if something happened to me? Or this must be tough to deal with. It's literally just people hearing about other people's stories over and over and over until you find a point of connection. It doesn't always mean that it's going to happen all the time or that it's going to happen with everyone. But my thought is that if it's going to happen, it comes from finding that point of a relation where you can put yourselves in the shoes of another and you can really experience what it feels like or felt like to go through what they went through. So that's the thing that I'm noticing about this is sparking empathy on a whole new level. And honestly, every time something happens like this, it does spark empathy on another level, especially when it's senseless, especially when it's like it's so unnecessary, especially when it's like, wow, in 2020 we're still here, we're still doing this, and so it takes us to another level as far as empathy. So those are my thoughts. I'm really curious of what your thoughts are around this topic and this particular article. And if you want to read this article, which I think you should, because you can also click on those video links and go deeper into each individual artist and each record label and what they're saying and how they're positioning themselves with this. You can check out that article in the description or comment section of this video. So, yeah. Stay safe, stay protected, not just physically, but emotionally as well. Do your breathing work, do your walk, take your walk, so that you can clear your head. I know so many people that was just like, I just had to get out and take a walk. I'm just overwhelmed. So last thing I'll say too is, I haven't, and this is purposely, I haven't watched the actual video, and that's another one of those emotional boundaries. I know what's going on and it's been described and I understand it and I've seen it before, and maybe at some point I may decide to, but right now I know that it would be a bit overwhelming for me, and I'm experiencing this pain, enough for it to be in a healthy place where it pushes me to do things that I can do for change, or to ponder and think on these things myself and go to another level, while at the same time not going crazy because of seeing some senseless act of violence that you can't unsee. And that's the tough part about these things, but it's also the part that sparks the deepest reason to push forward for change and evolution and revolution. So I hope this was enjoyable, and like I said, let me know what you think. What are your thoughts about these topics, this issue, and this article? Thanks a lot, and take care.